There is a quiet tension most men carry. You stay in conversations too long. You tolerate disrespect disguised as humor. You remain where your presence is no longer valued, and you call it patience. But something inside you tightens. That tightening is not weakness, it is a signal. If you cannot walk away, you have no power. The question is not why they act that way. The question is why you stay. Lesson 1. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The first truth is this: the inability to leave reveals hidden dependence. You may believe you are staying because you are patient, mature, or understanding, but examine the tension beneath your restraint. Is it calm, or is it fear? Fear of being alone. Fear of losing status. Fear of being misunderstood. When walking away feels impossible, it is not loyalty holding you in place. It is dependence. Dependence rarely announces itself loudly. It hides behind rational explanations. You tell yourself the situation is temporary. You say the disrespect was unintentional. You convince yourself that enduring it proves strength. But strength does not require endurance of what diminishes you. Endurance without choice is captivity. Consider the man who cannot leave a conversation where he is subtly mocked. He laughs along. He stays seated. He absorbs the tone. Why? Because leaving would expose something. It would reveal that he needs approval more than he values dignity. If he truly had power, he would not need to react. He would not need to argue. He would simply stand up and go. Power is not in dominating the room. It is in knowing you are not owned by it. When you cannot walk away from a relationship that drains you, what binds you? Is it love, or is it the fear of emptiness? When you cannot leave a job that erodes your self-respect, what keeps you there? Is it responsibility, or is it the belief that you are nothing without the title? The moment walking away feels unbearable, you have located your weakness. That discomfort is not a flaw in your personality. It is information. It shows you where your identity is entangled with external validation. History has already tested this pattern. Those who cannot leave must negotiate from a position of need, and need is visible. It alters your tone. It changes your posture. Others sense it. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. When a man needs to stay, his words carry less weight. His boundaries soften. His presence becomes negotiable. If you stay because you choose to, that is strength. If you stay because you cannot leave, that is dependence. Silence is not absence. It is selection. When you know you can walk away, your silence becomes heavy. You do not rush to defend yourself. You do not scramble to explain. You listen. And if the line is crossed, you exit without announcement. No threat, no speech, no scene, just departure. Most men never test this. They stay and hope the situation improves. They endure and call it character. But character without choice is submission dressed in discipline. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The first step is not leaving everything. It is recognizing where you are trapped. And once you see it clearly, the room feels different. The air shifts. You realize that the door was never locked. Only your fear was. Lesson 2. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The second principle is this: attachment often disguises itself as loyalty. You tell yourself you stay because you are committed, because you do not quit, because real men endure. But loyalty without freedom is not loyalty. It is attachment driven by fear. Loyalty is a choice renewed daily. Attachment is a grip tightened by insecurity. They look similar from the outside. Both remain. Both tolerate difficulty. But internally, they are different forces. One stands firm because it can leave. The other clings because it cannot survive departure. Ask yourself a direct question. If nothing were at stake, no reputation, no comfort, no fear of loneliness, would you still remain? If the answer is uncertain, then what you call loyalty may be dependency. In relationships, this confusion is common. A man stays where he is not respected. He tells himself love requires patience. He absorbs dismissive tone, subtle control, emotional withdrawal. Till he stays because leaving would mean confronting solitude. He stays because he has invested time, because walking away would feel like failure. But investment is not ownership. Time spent is not a chain. The same pattern appears in friendships. You remain around men who no longer share your values. Conversations revolve around mockery, gossip, noise. You feel smaller after every gathering. Yet you return. Why? Because history binds you. Because starting over feels uncomfortable. Because walking away feels like betrayal. But loyalty to history is not loyalty to growth. Time has proven this pattern. When a man cannot detach, his boundaries erode quietly. He becomes flexible where he should be firm. He laughs when he should be silent. He tolerates when he should withdraw. Not because he lacks awareness, but because he lacks freedom. True loyalty is calm. It does not beg. It does not cling. It stays because it chooses to stay. And because it can leave at any moment. Its presence carries weight. Attachment, on the other hand, negotiates from fear. It over-explains. It over-compromises. It fears conflict because conflict might threaten stability. And stability, built on fear, is fragile. Consider how differently you move when you know you are not trapped. Your tone changes. Your posture straightens. You are less reactive. Why? Because you are not fighting to preserve something at any cost. You are observing whether it deserves your presence. Walking away is not rejection. It is evaluation. Most men confuse endurance with strength. They believe leaving means weakness. But weakness is remaining where your value is not recognized because you are afraid of what happens next. If you can walk away and still choose to stay, your loyalty becomes powerful. If you cannot leave, your loyalty becomes leverage against you. Attachment feels intense. Loyalty feels controlled. And power only belongs to the man who knows the difference. Lesson 3. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The third truth is this: tolerance without boundaries becomes submission. Many men believe strength means absorbing pressure without reacting. They remain calm while being dismissed. They endure repeated disrespect. They pride themselves on not being sensitive. But when tolerance has no limit, it stops being strength. It becomes permission. There is a difference between composure and silent surrender. Composure observes and decides. Surrender absorbs and adapts. One is controlled. The other is afraid to disrupt. Watch what happens in small moments. A colleague interrupts you repeatedly. You let it pass. A friend makes a cutting joke at your expense. You smile. A partner speaks with subtle contempt. You rationalize it. Each time you stay without correction, a message is sent, not through words, through acceptance. People test edges quietly, not always with malice, often with instinct. They sense how far they can go. If there is no boundary, they keep walking, not because they are evil, because you have shown them there is no consequence. Walking away is a boundary in motion. When you remain where you should withdraw, you communicate need, and need weakens your position. It tells others that maintaining connection matters more to you than maintaining dignity. Over time, your presence becomes expected, not respected. History has already tested this pattern. Groups respond to what is enforced, not what is requested. If a man asks to be respected but never withdraws when disrespected, his request becomes background noise. Words without consequence dissolve. This does not require anger. It requires clarity. You do not argue. You do not threaten. you do not escalate. You simply remove yourself from what crosses your line, quietly, consistently. The moment you walk away from what diminishes you, the dynamic shifts, not because you forced it, because you redefine the cost of access to you. Respect is not demanded, it is regulated. Most men fear that setting boundaries will isolate them. They believe leaving will make them appear dramatic or cold, so they stay and slowly lose internal authority. They remain present but feel smaller. They speak but are not heard. Tolerance has value when it protects peace. It loses value when it protects fear. If you can leave at the first clear sign that your standards are violated, you regain leverage, not through aggression, through absence. Your withdrawal forces evaluation. It creates space where there was once comfort. If you cannot walk away, you negotiate from below. If you can, even your silence carries weight. And the room changes when a man is willing to leave it. Lesson 4. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The fourth principle is this: the moment you can leave, the psychological balance shifts. Not outwardly at first, inwardly. And that inward shift changes everything. When you know you are free to exit, your nervous system settles. You stop scanning for approval. You stop adjusting your tone to avoid rejection. You stop over-explaining your position. Why? Because you are no longer trying to secure your place. You already know you can remove yourself from the table. This is where power becomes quiet. Consider negotiations. The man who must close the deal speaks faster. He fills silence. He concedes too early. His need leaks through subtle cues. The man who can walk away does not rush. He listens. He lets pauses breathe. He evaluates instead of persuading. His stillness is not strategy alone. It is freedom. Freedom reduces noise. The same applies in relationships. When you fear losing someone, you monitor their mood. You measure your words. You soften your edges. You become cautious, not because you lack conviction, but because you fear consequences. But when you know you can leave, you speak plainly, not harshly, not emotionally, plainly. And plain speech carries weight. Silence gains authority when departure is possible. People sense this. They may not articulate it, but they respond differently. Your boundaries become assumed rather than tested. Your calm becomes heavier. Why? Because they understand you are not anchored by desperation. History has already tested this pattern. Every dynamic tilts toward the one who needs less. The one who is not afraid of loss moves with steadiness. The one who fears loss negotiates from tension. This does not mean detachment from everything. It means internal independence. You may choose to stay. You may choose to engage. But your identity is not fused with the outcome. The psychological shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of thinking, "I hope this works," you think, "If this does not align, I leave." That shift removes urgency. And urgency is the enemy of authority. Walking away is not about physical exit alone. It is about mental readiness. The readiness to accept change without panic. The readiness to let go without collapsing. If you can't walk away, every disagreement feels like a threat. If you can, disagreement becomes information. And once you experience that shift even once, you recognize the difference. The room feels lighter, the pressure fades. You are no longer trying to control the situation. You are simply willing to remove yourself from it. Power does not shout when it can leave. It waits, and it chooses. Lesson 5. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The fifth truth is this: silence only has weight when departure is possible. Without the option to leave, silence becomes endurance. With the option to leave, silence becomes authority. Many men believe silence alone makes them strong. They stop arguing. They stop reacting. They withdraw into themselves. But If they remain physically and emotionally trapped, that silence is not strength. It is containment. It is pressure building without release. Real silence is chosen, not imposed. Imagine two men in the same situation. Both are criticized unfairly. The first man stays because he cannot afford conflict. He says nothing because he fears losing connection, opportunity, or status. His silence is tense. It carries resentment. The second man says nothing because he sees no need to defend himself. And if the pattern continues, he will leave. His silence is controlled. It carries certainty. The difference is invisible, but it is felt. When others know you will remain regardless of how they treat you, your silence becomes safe for them. It costs them nothing. But when they know you will withdraw access if lines are crossed, your silence becomes a warning without words. Silence is not absence. It is selection. You select when to speak. You select when to disengage. You select when to stay. And because it is selection, not fear, it commands respect. History has already tested this pattern. Those who speak constantly lose influence. Those who remain quiet, yet willing to act, create tension in the room. People adjust their behavior around them. Not because they are loud, because they are decisive. Think of the man who always explains himself. He wants to be understood. He wants to clear confusion. He stays late in arguments, repeating his position in different forms. Why? Why? Ought. Why? Because he cannot afford to let the misunderstanding stand. His identity is tied to their perception. The man who can walk away does not chase understanding. He states his position once. If it is ignored or dismissed, he withdraws. Not dramatically, not emotionally, simply and clearly. Yes, A. When walking away is real, silence becomes a boundary. Most men fear that silence combined with withdrawal will make them isolated, but the opposite is often true. It filters. It reveals who respects your standards and who only valued your availability. Unquote. If you cannot leave, your silence will eventually turn into frustration. If you can, your silence remains clean. Power is not in saying less, it is in needing less. And when a man needs less, every word he speaks becomes deliberate. Every pause becomes meaningful. Every exit becomes final without being announced. Lesson 6. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The sixth principle is this. There is a difference between reaction and withdrawal. Most men confuse the two. They believe leaving means reacting emotionally. They imagine walking away as slamming doors, raised voices, dramatic exits. That is not power. That is impulse. Reaction is driven by heat. Withdrawal is driven by clarity. When you react, you are still controlled by the situation. You are responding to it, shaped by it, entangled in it. Even if you leave physically, your mind stays behind. You replay the conversation. You rehearse what you should have said. You crave resolution. That is not walking away. That is retreating while still attached. True withdrawal is quiet. It does not seek to punish. It does not seek to prove a point. It simply removes participation. Consider an argument escalating. Voices rise. Accusations sharpen. The man who reacts pushes back. He defends. He counters. He tries to win. If he leaves loudly, making sure the other person feels it. His exit is part of the conflict. The man who withdraws feels the shift before it explodes. He recognizes the tone has changed. He senses that the conversation no longer serves clarity. He stops engaging. If necessary, he ends it without theatrics. No raised volume, no long explanation. Just absence. One seeks dominance, the other preserves dignity. History has already tested this pattern. Those who react reveal where they are vulnerable. Their emotions show what controls them. Those who withdraw reveal discipline. They show that access to them is conditional. Walking away is not an emotional statement. It is a structural decision. Ask yourself in moments of tension, are you leaving to escape discomfort? Or are you leaving because the situation violates your standard? The first is avoidance. The second is authority. And plus authority. When you cannot distinguish between reaction and withdrawal, you stay trapped in cycles. You either explode or endure. You either overcommit or collapse. There is no balance. But when you understand withdrawal, you gain a third option. You do not need to fight. You do not need to submit. You can exit. If you can't walk away, every conflict feels like a battlefield. If you can, many conflicts lose their importance before they even begin. Power is not in overwhelming others. It is in controlling your participation. And when you master withdrawal, you stop being pulled into every emotional storm. You decide which environments deserve your presence. The rest lose their grip without resistance. Lesson 7. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The seventh truth is this. Most men stay because they fear losing identity. Not the person, not the opportunity, the identity attached to it. You remain in the relationship because you are the committed one. You remain in the job because you are the provider. You remain in the circle because you are the loyal friend. Walking away threatens more than comfort. It threatens the image you built around yourself, and identity is heavy. When a man cannot leave, often it is not attachment to others that binds him. It is attachment to who he believes he is within that structure. If he leaves, who is he? If he steps away, what replaces the role? History has already tested this pattern. Men cling to positions long after those positions begin to diminish them, not because they are incapable, because they are afraid of emptiness. Without the role, they must confront themselves without titles. Consider the executive who stays in a toxic environment. He knows the culture corrodes him. He feels the erosion, but leaving would mean surrendering the status. Without the office, the authority, the recognition, who remains? So he stays. Not for the work, for the identity. Or the man who remains in a relationship where respect has faded. He says he is fighting for love, but often he is fighting for the version of himself that exists within it. The partner, the chosen one, the man who did not fail. Walking away feels like erasing a chapter, and most men would rather endure discomfort than rewrite themselves. But power requires detachment from labels. If your sense of worth depends on a role, you are not free. If your strength depends on being needed, you are not strong. When identity is tied too tightly to circumstance, circumstance controls you. Walking away does not destroy identity. It refines it. The man who can leave understands that he is not the title, not the relationship, not the reputation. Those are external arrangements, and he remains himself whether he stays or goes. Identity anchored internally cannot be threatened by departure. When you know who you are without the structure, leaving becomes a decision, not a crisis. The fear weakens, the panic fades. You no longer negotiate with yourself to justify staying. If you can't walk away, you are protecting an image. If you can, you are protecting your core. And once you detach identity from environment, you realize something unsettling. The roles were never the source of your strength. They were only platforms. And platforms can be replaced without diminishing the man standing on them. Lesson 8. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The eighth principle is this. Every relationship and negotiation is shaped by leverage, whether acknowledged or not. And leverage belongs to the one who can leave. Power dynamics are rarely declared. They are implied. In a partnership, in business, in friendship, There is always a silent calculation. Who needs this more? Who fears loss more? And who adjusts first? The man who needs the outcome more will bend first. Consider a negotiation table. Two individuals sit across from each other. One must close the deal to survive. The other has options. The one who must close will justify concessions. He will reinterpret disadvantages as compromises. He will hurry. His tone tightens. His body leans forward. He cannot walk away, so he negotiates from below. The other listens. He does not rush to fill silence. He allows discomfort to linger. He asks questions calmly. If the terms do not align, he stands and leaves. No hostility, no pleading. Just departure. That departure is leverage. Leverage does not require aggression. It requires alternatives. History has already tested this pattern. The one with alternatives shapes the frame. The one without them adapts to it. This extends beyond business. In relationships, when one partner believes they cannot leave, their boundaries weaken. They overcompensate. They seek reassurance. They tolerate shifts in tone or respect that they once would have addressed, not because they are incapable, because they fear destabilizing the connection. The partner who senses this may not consciously exploit it, but instinct recognizes imbalance. And imbalance changes behavior. Walking away restores balance. When both individuals know the other is capable of leaving, interactions become cleaner. Respect increases. Words are weighed more carefully. Why? Because access is not guaranteed. Access must be earned. If you cannot leave, you will attempt to secure value through persuasion, through explanation, through emotional investment. But persuasion without leverage sounds like pleading. The ability to walk away changes how you carry yourself. Your voice slows. Your eyes do not search for approval. You ask fewer questions designed to reassure you. You listen more. You decide more. This does not mean you constantly threaten departure. That is insecurity disguised as power. True leverage is quiet. It does not need to be announced. If you can't walk away, every negotiation feels urgent. Every disagreement feels risky. If you can, urgency fades. Risk becomes manageable. Power does not lie in forcing outcomes. It lies in not depending on them. And when you no longer depend on the outcome, the dynamic shifts without a word being spoken. Lesson 9. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The ninth truth is this: detachment must be trained deliberately, not improvised in moments of crisis. Most men wait until they are overwhelmed before attempting to leave. By then, emotion is already in control. They try to detach while still burning with resentment. They try to withdraw while still craving validation. That is not detachment. That is exhaustion. Detachment begins long before departure. It begins with small refusals. Refusing to chase explanations. Refusing to respond immediately to provocation. Refusing to overinvest in outcomes that are not yet earned. Each small refusal strengthens internal independence. Discipline is built in minor moments. Consider how quickly you respond to messages from someone whose approval you value. Notice the subtle urgency, the mental space they occupy. That is attachment revealing itself. Training detachment means slowing that reflex, not to manipulate, to recalibrate. History has already tested this pattern. Those who practice restraint in small interactions remain composed in major ones. Those who indulge every impulse collapse under pressure. If you want the ability to walk away when it matters, you must rehearse non-attachment daily. You practice by not explaining yourself unnecessarily, by allowing misunderstandings to exist without rushing to correct them, by letting silence sit without filling it. End quote. You train by reducing emotional dependency on praise, by observing criticism without immediate defense, by limiting how much of your identity you invest in temporary arrangements. Detachment is not indifference. It is self-containment. When you are self-contained, you do not grip tightly. You participate fully, but you are not consumed. You care, but you are not controlled. Ask yourself, if this disappeared tomorrow, would I collapse? If the answer is yes, then your attachment is deeper than you admit. Walking away requires inner stability. Stability that does not crumble when routines shift or connections dissolve. Most men attempt detachment as a reaction to pain, but detachment must be cultivated before pain arrives. Otherwise, departure becomes dramatic, emotional, incomplete. Power is prepared, not improvised. When you train detachment, you notice something unexpected. Situations lose intensity. Conversations lose their edge. The urgency that once pressured you fades. Why? Because you are no longer clinging to outcomes as proof of worth. If you can't walk away, you have no power. Training detachment is how you regain it without spectacle. And when the moment finally comes where departure is necessary, it will not feel like a rupture. It will feel like alignment. Lesson 10. If you can't walk away, you have no power. The 10th principle is this. Walking away is not an emotional reaction. It is a long-term strategy. Most men think of departure as an event, a breakup, a resignation, a confrontation that ends with a door closing. But power is not built in single exits. It is built in a lifestyle that never depends entirely on one door. When you structure your life around a single source of validation, income, companionship, or identity, you weaken your position before conflict even appears. You give the situation the authority to define your limits. Dependence is rarely dramatic. It grows quietly. One promotion you cannot afford to lose. One relationship you believe you cannot replace. One circle you think you cannot outgrow. Slowly, your options narrow. And when options narrow, fear increases. History has already tested this pattern. The man with no alternatives negotiates from survival. The man who builds quietly in the background negotiates from choice. Walking away as a strategy means you are always building capacity elsewhere. Skills, networks, internal strength, financial stability, emotional independence. Not to escape, but to ensure that if alignment breaks, you are not trapped. This changes how you behave long before any exit occurs. You do not tolerate slowly rising disrespect because you know you have options. You do not cling to fading dynamics because you are not defined by them. You invest, but you do not over-invest. You commit, but you do not chain yourself. Long-term power is quiet preparation. Ask yourself, if this environment shifted tomorrow, would I have space to move? If the answer is no, then your strategy has been short-sighted. Most men build comfort. Few build mobility. Mobility is not instability. It is readiness. When walking away is integrated into your structure, you do not threaten it. You do not fantasize about it. You simply know it is possible. That knowledge removes desperation from your posture. Power is not displayed in leaving loudly. It is demonstrated in never being cornered. And when a man is never cornered, his presence changes. He speaks with measured tone. He chooses carefully. He stays because he decides to stay, not because he must. If you can't walk away, you have no power. But when walking away becomes part of your foundation, you rarely need to use it. If this message unsettled you, it was meant to. Most men will hear it and return to comfort. A few will recognize themselves in it and choose discipline instead. If you are building quiet authority, not noise, if you prefer control over validation, if you understand that power begins with the ability to walk away, subscribe to Austere Mind not for motivation, for alignment.